So this is how to sew corners using bias tape. So I'm going to start off with just a rectangle of practice fabric, and I'm going to pin right sides together along one of these edges. So I'm attaching these together like this, making sure I'm going through all the layers of fabric that I've got, all the way to the end. So here's my whole piece, and I'm going to measure 5 millimeters from this edge. So I'll line up my ruler and make that mark just on that folded seam of the bias tape. So I'm going to sew down this line here as I usually would when I do bias tape, but I'm going to stop as soon as I get to this mark and end my thread there. So I'll start this line of stitching as usual. So I'll do a couple of reverse stitches and then just continue straight down the folded line of the bias tape. And I'm going to stop as soon as I get to this mark that I've just made and do a reverse stitch there, remove it, and then cut my thread. I'm now going to fold this up at a 45-degree angle in line with this edge. So I've got a 45-degree angle here, and now I'll fold it back down on itself, again in line with the edge of my piece of fabric, and I'll now continue sewing as before, joining up where that end of the previous line of stitching was, and I'll continue straight down here. So I'm going to pin that in place and continue down this line. So I'll start this line of stitching 5 millimeters in from the edge, so it matches where I joined it in this direction. So I'm going to put it in and just hand move down my needle so I can get it exactly in line to where I want it. So now when I gently lower the needle, it's exactly on that point, and I'm going to start my new line of stitching here. I'll do a couple of reverse stitches to seal that line, and then I'll continue straight on down my current edge. This is now what it looks like now I've finished down that line, and what you want to do is turn this inside out, and you'll end up with a really nice corner that looks super sharp. So that's what I want on one side, and then on the other side you want to fold this completely flat on one side, so you have a nice sticking out triangle here, and then fold that back in on itself. It can take a little bit of fiddling to get it right, and you're aiming to have two identical corners like so, and I'm going to pin that in place before stitching it down with a top stitch like normal. I'm going to sew as usual as close as I can to the edge of this piece of bias tape, so I'm just about covering the stitching from the other side. Once I've just gone into that corner, I'm going to take out these clips, keep my needle in that corner, but rotate the fabric 90 degrees, and then continue straight down this side of the bias binding. So this is what my final corner looks like. It's super sharp, and I'm really happy with that. It can take a few practices to get it as neat or the shape as you want, but just keep having a go on smaller squares like this before you implement it on your final pieces.